Sac passe, mes amis. Welcome back to another cooking video with your girl Stacy. And if you haven't already figured it out, I'm making a Haitian dish. And this particular dish is griot with some bananne pese and some rice and peas. And of course, la pièce de résistance, Pikliz. Oh my God, when I tell you how I am obsessed with griot. My daughter's father, John, he introduced me to this dish. Being a Haitian man, lovely man at that, he was like, have you ever had griot? And I'm like, what is that? Took me to this restaurant, and when I tell you, the meat was cooked to perfection. It had the beautiful sear on the outside. The fat was crispy. And then when you bit into it, it was so juicy and so moist. And the pikliz, now y'all know I love me some spicy food. The pikliz, the spicy cabbage and the carrot and the peppers and the lime juice, Lord, when I tell you, woo. So, being that I was in love with this dish and dating my daughter's father at the time, his mother, Simone, she came over and she showed me how to make this dish. Granted, I still have yet to make it taste as decadent as hers, but I think I come somewhat close. My daughter says, Mom, you're almost there, you're almost there. And I didn't realize what was missing. And what was missing was the Haitian chef spice, to which I ran out of today. And thankfully, John is going to send me some more. So I just want to say a big shout out to John, a huge shout out to Simone. Merci beaucoup pour tous. J'adore mon griot. To say que j'adore griot. I love me some griot. And I hope that you will take part in learning this recipe right along with me. So yeah, enough said. So we're going to get started with the pikliz. I had grated my cabbage and I sliced up some of my Scotch bonnet peppers along with some sweet orange peppers. And with that, I squeezed some lime juice on top of that with some brown sugar, some black pepper, salt, and a little bit of vinegar. But I mostly added the lime juice because I feel like that gives it the better taste, and half of an orange, the juice of an orange that was put in there, just to bring out the flavor. And then I went ahead and grated my carrots. Now, it's been brought to my attention, so I wanted to just make it with only cabbage. You cannot do that. The Haitian community would come for me if I did not put the carrots with the cabbage. It is a must. It is a staple. Don't try and switch that up. Don't try and do it your way. Honestly, stick with the Haitian tradition. Just do it. Okay. I've had someone be like, no, you can't. And yeah, so I didn't. So I went ahead and I just grated in those carrots and I mixed it all together with the lime juice and the peppers. And then once I was feeling like it had the right flavor profile, I went ahead and put it in my jar so that I can get at it whenever I want to. Now, mind you, this full jar that I'm filling it up with, I'm very hesitant to admit, but I will admit that it won't last me a week. I eat pikliz. When I make it, I eat it with everything. It's so delicious. And I like the heat of it. And I feel like the longer it stays in the refrigerator, the more the flavor profiles build up. So I just enjoy it. Trust me, it's worth having and keeping in your fridge, even when you're not eating griot. But it is great with the griot because it helps to break down the fatty pieces that you have with the pork, which you will see soon when I begin to cut up and clean the meat. And there it is in the jar. So you typically want to use pork shoulder. You do want to get a nice cut of meat that has the skin and the fat. I'm telling you, if you don't have this, you don't want a lean cut of meat. Like, you'll have lean bits in there, and that's cool, but you must have pieces with the fat and the skin on it. Oh my gosh, once it's in the oven and it sears, or if you deep fry it, most times people do deep fry it, but I've learned to do it in the oven, especially since I make so much, and it is time consuming to do piece by piece, but it all depends, you know what I mean? But I put mine in the oven, and when it just bakes in there and it's sizzling, Lord of mercy, it is so good. So now you want to cut these up into nice cube size pieces, like, you know, not too big, not too small, medium size. That's what I'm getting at. So medium size pieces that you can have with the plantain, which will be the Bananne Pese, and you can like stack it up. They will shrink. So if you're noticing, I do have some larger pieces in there with the fatty pieces, because that's honestly just a preference of mine. You can go ahead and cut it how you choose, but this is how I was shown and what I've seen from the restaurants that I've visited in Montreal, like Steve Anna, one of my favorite Haitian restaurants in Montreal, to be honest with you. There are many hot spots where you can get griot. I don't like the ones that have commercialized the Haitian food and, you know, want to make it fancy and do these fusions and such. I mean, this is just me. I've tried them, it's delicious, but I like the ones that remind you of the Haitian grandmother or auntie or eldest cousin in the kitchen, you know, throwing it down. Kind of like me. But you catch what I'm saying. So after all the pieces are cut, I'm going to go right on ahead and get them cleaned. Now, I washed them twice, and I did that because I wanted to make sure that it was properly rinsed. And once done, I moved on to the next step, which is seasoning the meat. I used my regular seasonings: salt, pepper, garlic powder. I did use a little bit of oxtail seasoning and some brown sugar, and added some more lime to it, as well as some onions and the seasonings that you will need to make this wonderful dish, which includes that amazing chef spice that I was introduced to just last year, to be honest with you. And it changed my world, and I pretty much use it with everything. And that explains why I ran out of it so quickly. So moving right along, you would have already seen that I added the juice of half an orange. In this recipe, I ended up using an entire one. I pulled out the other half and squeezed some more in there. We're going to go ahead and add some of that green seasoning to there. You can find the recipe for that on my page. And I'm just going to mix and combine everything together and massage the meat, make sure everything is nicely coated. I kept the bones from the pork shoulder, especially that big piece. I feel like it does give that extra kick to it when you're stewing this down in the pot, which you'll see coming up shortly. And there I go with the other half of the orange, because I don't know, my senses told me put more orange in there. You can go ahead and add some orange juice, actual orange juice without the pulp, about a cup, and mix that in there. I went with the actual oranges just because I can get it a little bit more on the sour side, so that way it can, you know, marry with the lime juice but have a slightly sweeter taste to it. So once it's seasoned, you know, I'm going to go ahead and put that aside and let it sit for a while so that the meat can marinate in all these wonderful juices and tenderize. While the meat was tenderizing for about 4 hours, I started off with the plantain. Now, this plantain, when I purchased it, was green, and I let it sit for about 2 days. And that was only because I wasn't making the griot right away. So I'm going to start with cutting them in thick, chunky pieces, and I'm going to fry them in some hot oil for about, I want to say, 10 minutes. Not too long, just enough to get it a nice golden yellow. So once I feel that it's ready, I'm going to take those out and then I'm going to begin with pressing them down. I don't have that special unique tool that I see a lot of Haitians have in their household to press this down, so I use my two cutting boards. The idea is to get them as flat as possible, and I somehow had these two cutting boards and was like, oh, I'm just gonna get creative with it. Again, the whole fun part of cooking and discovering little things such as these. And once they're like this is obviously how they got their name, Bananne Pese, because you're pressing down on the banana. So once I've achieved the desired flatness, I go ahead and add those back to the hot pan. I had to move quickly because I kept the oil going. I did turn it down slightly, but I also didn't want to reduce the heat that I already achieved in the pan. I only turned it down so that I didn't want it to smoke up my kitchen. So now I'm just gonna fry those until they get a nice deep golden brown. And then I'll set them aside on some paper towel, or in this case I used a cloth that I had to drain the oil because you don't want it too oily. Next, we're gonna get started on the actual griot. You're gonna begin with heating up some oil in a large pot, and you're gonna add your pieces of pork to the hot oil. I add my pieces gradually and I just keep going. What I'm actually doing here is making sure not to grab that big bone piece, and I'm grabbing everything around it. And I do this intentionally. It's just a thing of choice. It's not a specific thing that you have to do it this way. Again, this is your creative process. I let this simmer in the pot for about 15 minutes before going ahead and adding the additional spices that we will need when stewing this. And that is the Scotch bonnet pepper, the bay leaves, the thyme, the green onions, and I added I believe it was one beef stock cube that I added to that, and that was one of two. So for the first 30 minutes, I used one beef stock cube, and then after I checked on it and tasted it, I added another one. I went ahead and also added enough boiling hot water to the pot. The rest of my chef seasoning. Lord, when I tell you it hurt me to use that last bit, but the only thing that brought me comfort was knowing that John was going to send some more. So I am eternally grateful for that man, yes. Anyhow, like I said in the beginning, this dish is nothing without that spice. If you need to get it, let me know. I will see what I can do. If not, because I don't know what else to tell you. There's just no replacing it. And I even tried to find it on Amazon. It's not there. And perhaps Toronto does have a store that I can pick it up. We'll see. Until then, I'm getting it from Montreal. So after about an hour of stewing, I'm now separating the pork from the liquid because you don't want any of that liquid to go into the frying process. I did not deep fry my pork. Yes, a lot of people do deep fry it, but I've also learned that you can put this in the oven. My way is the oven method, being that I had so many pieces of pork. I couldn't even imagine or fathom me standing there frying all these little bits like I had done with the pan searing of the oxtail in my oxtail video. It's different. Like, you have a deep fryer, throw them in there. That's typically what they do in the restaurant anyhow. But it doesn't taste any different when you're putting it on a pan like this and sticking it into the oven. My oven has been preheated at 400 degrees, and while I'm adding the pieces to the pan, I'm also tasting the pork just to ensure that, it has the right flavors. And because, as I've already mentioned and will continue to mention, I am greedy, oh God, man. I just want to taste it. Sometimes you must taste as you go, which is most likely why people who do cook don't eat their food when they're serving other people. They must wait because you do so much tasting and tasting and tasting. You ain't want none after that. You just want to chill and be like, okay, you know what? I know what it tastes like. I'm good. Let me get hungry for it. So as I'm adding the pieces of the pork to the pan, I am not adding, like, you'll find there'll be like thyme sticks and the bay leaves. Those don't go in there. I'm doing my best to add only the pork. Oh Lord, it looks so pretty. And you know, you want to just make sure it's lined up properly, and once in the oven you will check on it periodically to give it a nice toss and turn, because you don't want for just one side of the pork to sear in there. And while that's in the oven, I'm going to get started on my gravy. Whew, this gravy I had to learn. It took me a minute because I'm not the best gravy maker. So I went with some butter and some ketchup. And this is honestly me going based on slightly from memory and mostly from taste. So I'll add the garlic and the red peppers, which are sweet red peppers, and onions to the melted butter and the ketchup. And I'm just gonna give it a nice sear, or I should say saute, in the pan for about 10 minutes before going ahead and adding the liquid from the griot that the pork had boiled in. So much flavor. I skinned off the oil from the top of the juices from the pork sauce because I didn't want to have an oily gravy. So I'm just going to add what I feel I want to add, and honestly the rest I keep it. I put it in a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware and stick it in the freezer because you don't want to waste that. I'm gonna just be straight up. You just don't want to waste that. There's so much flavor in that, and you can use that with future meals. So again, with the taste as I go, very important, and realizing that it's missing some black pepper. There are no hot peppers in there. There's enough of the heat from the pepper that the pork was boiling with. So the Scotch bonnet pepper did leave enough flavor and the right amount of heat in that sauce. And that gravy is just superb. I impressed myself, to be honest with you. Ooh la la, gade, gade, gade. Hey, hey, look at this piece of pork, yeah, man. Yes, and you know I've been tasting it. I've been going in the oven and tasting it, being like, it's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. Lord of mercy when I tell you. Ooh, I love me some griot. I love me some griot. And it's important to learn how to make the dishes that you love. You can't always rely on other people because sometimes they just don't feel like doing it. This is a labor of love, y'all. If you knew how long it takes to even make said dish, it tastes nice. Look at me with the fork. You see that? Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, cooking makes me so happy. Yep. Yeah, man, it's ready. You got the hand flicking and ting and the greedy dance. Life is good. Life is good. And so is this plate. Look at that. God damn. You got the pikliz. You have some rice and peas. Oh God, the Bananne Pese and a happy Stacy. Ah, this dish just makes me so happy, and I hope it makes you happy too. Just want to say a quick thank you to my new viewers and new subscribers. And let me just remind you once again that God is good all the time, and all the time. God is so good, y'all. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.